How you doing? Got a 2012 Chevy Malibu. I'm gonna do front brakes on it. Of course, you know how to jack them up and support them properly with a jack stand, and then get your wheels off. And once you get your wheels off, you want to look at your brakes. Well, they're metal to metal on one side, and on this side they're almost gone. So what you want to do is you want to look at your brake hoses, you know, especially up in here. If they don't have this big old thing on there, look at them. Look them right there. You want to look for like where they do a lot of flexing, looking for cracks, a crack in there or a crack on there. Those look pretty good. And since you're in there, you want to look for your springs being broke. If they're broke, then you definitely need to have them replaced. You know. This one looks pretty good. You know, always before you take your tire off, you want to shake your suspension. You know, right to left to check your tie rod ends. You always want to look at your bushings, your control arms. But anyway, we'll get back to the brakes here. You need to remove these caliper bolts. There's two of them, one here and one down here, and those are a 14 millimeter. You take them out. Sometimes this pin will spin, and if this pin spins, you know, it's a slide pin. If this spins when you're turning that, then you gotta get some nose vice grips in there, clamp it on it to hold it, and then you can get it off. And once you get it off, then you'll get a screwdriver, and you might be able to go inside here and pry the piston in a little bit, maybe, or even put your pry bar, your screwdriver in here, and pry the caliper off. Well, anyway, let's get to taking these bolts out. We'll see how it goes from there. Well, I got my bolts out. This is what they look like. These are the caliper bolts. So this is what I'm talking about. You stick your screwdriver in there like that, and it goes inside the pad. And you can pull on you're prying against the caliper, and as you're pulling on it, you're actually pushing the caliper towards you. When you're doing that, you're pushing the piston in a little bit at the same time. So you don't need to do it a lot, because we'll push them in with a C-clamp. So now we can take the caliper off. So then by doing that, what we just did, we found out that the piston goes in. So if the piston pushes in, then you know your caliper is pretty decent. And you have no restriction on your line holding it, keeping pressure on it. Sometimes the lines, like up in here, the metal swells up and actually shrinks the hose because it's swelling up around it and restricts the hose. But you'll have, 10,000, 5,000 pounds of pressure coming through this line, going into here, pushing through there, but you don't have that same amount of pressure pushing back for it to release, so your piston stays applied on your brakes. It's just an idea. But anyway, we know the piston goes in, so we know it's not frozen, so we don't have to really spend too much time on that. So now, got the caliper bracket. There's two bolts holding the caliper bracket on. And I think so. I think those are 21s. I'll have to double check. And then I'll let you know. If they're not, then I'll be back to tell you what size it is. But anyway, we're gonna remove these two bolts, one here and one down here, okay? And those are in there pretty good, so you have to use a breaker bar. All right, I got the caliper off. They were a 21. They're, pretty big head bolt. Here's your caliper bracket. You'll need the caliper bracket. One thing you need to check out on a caliper bracket is the slide pins. Make sure they spin. Make sure they're not frozen in there, okay? Also, then we're gonna take the pads out and the bundle clips, and we'll clean the surface down inside here. We'll make them nice and shiny, and then we'll paint it. Then we'll put some seal glide on our slide pins. But don't put too much in here. You just want to put a light film on the pin and stick the pin in there. If you put too much seal glide and get it inside there, you won't be able to push the piston down. And then when you turn the knob down and push the piston down, then you can't get this onto the, you can't get your caliper on there. But anyway, let's go back over here to the rotor. We'll need to put our Torx bit in there and remove our retainer bolt. So we'll go ahead and get that, and I'll let you know what size that is. And this would be a T30. Sometimes when you put your Allen on there and you hit it with your little impact gun, you'll end up breaking your tip off your bit. Sometimes you can use an impact driver. You know, hit it with your hammer. Those work the best. If you can't get it and you're breaking your bits, then you have to use this flathead chisel and chisel it the direction of counterclockwise. Keep working it. And once you see it move, then you can put your busted bit in there and finish threading it off. And this rotor is loose, so we're lucky we don't have to hit it with a hammer. But it's frozen on there, and then you'll have to hit it around here a couple times. And if you're not going to reuse the rotor, which I don't recommend reusing a rotor, you can just smack the 3-pound sledge onto the rotor part. And it still won't come, to make sure you put some penetrant around there and let it soak a little bit. Okay? You need to get it off. And this one came off, so I have to drop it on my toe. So, now if you look at the hub, there's the surface that rides on here and the surface that rides on there. And here it's a step. This is lower, so. But all this rust, got to remove all this rust before you put on a new rotor, because the rust will not allow the rotor to be true. You know, spin nice and even. It has high and low spots, so that means the rotor will be like, when it's rotating, it'll be like going like this. If it's doing that, then it gives you a brake pulsation. So you want to clean all that up. And once you get it cleaned up, you put a fine film of NSCs on it. So, we'll see. Okay, now there's your hub. That's pretty much cleaned up. I use a die grinder with some discs, different size discs. Screwdriver, nice flat edge. Nice small wire brush. Okay. Hit it with some brake clean, and then I'll put a fine film of NSCs on there that'll help protect it in the future repairs. Okay. And we want to push our piston back in. Make sure your line's not pinched to restrict it from going in. You can use a C-clamp with the old pad. Okay, C-clamp against the caliper. You got an old pad pushing up against the piston with the C-clamp. Okay, now that's good. So now we got the hub clean, piston pushed back in. All we gotta do is put some dielectric NSCs on there. So then that's ready. We'll be ready. And then we'll have to clean up our caliper bracket. You want to remove your pads and your abundant clips. Now you see that surface there? It's all rusty. You need to clean those up, make them nice and shiny, and then we'll paint them. Alrighty. So now you see it, nice and shiny. I'm just scratching them. I'm not removing any metal. Okay. I get the paint out. Okay. Take my pins out. I put some silk line on them. And then as I'm pushing them back in, you want to turn them. And you want to put a little bit of silk line on that spot here, so when it pushes in a little boot, it lubes the boot up too, you know. Like I said before, you don't want to fill this up with dielectric grease. It's like filling up with water and you can't compress it. Okay, so now that's ready. So all we gotta do is put our abundant clips on there and put them on the, mount them to the knuckle. Next is our rotor. Hey, all right, caliper bracket. I got my clips in there. Paint's dry. Put my lube in here. You know, dielectric grease, Silk Glide. Now you got your rotors, brand new. got a film of oil on them that needs to be removed with degreaser, Windex, soap and water. Do not use brake clean on the rotors because of the new style pads with the flour. They're not compatible with it and they will deteriorate. All right, so we're gonna clean these up and we'll put them on the vehicle. We got the anti-seize on the hubs. And then we'll mount the caliper brackets. Had the rotors on with the retainer screws. Now I'm just gonna do the caliper brackets. Caliper bracket bolts, caliper bracket. All right, okay. Okay, you get your caliper brackets on. You snug your bolts up and you tighten them up. Those are like 80 foot-pounds. But you better look it up. Manufactured. I'm just giving you an idea. All right, now you gotta put your pads on. Put the pad in the slot on the bottom like that. And on top, you wanna push this pad into the clip. Okay. Because if you just push the pad in there and push on there, you might be pushing against the clip. So you need to push that clip that way so you can slide the pad in, okay? And you do the same thing to the inside pad. The inside pad has the squeaker, which is usually towards the rotation. And that one I'll put it in the top first. I'll do the bottom and I'll push it in. Just that easy. The trick is to get these clips out of the way when you're pushing the pad in, okay? I'll just kind of give them a little bit of an angle. That'd be good. Okay, we got our pistons pushed back in on our calipers. Got them sanded down the best we can, just with the wire brush. I will put the caliper on. And when you put the caliper on, make sure your line is not twisted, goofy looking. Make sure you just go straight to it. Put the caliper on and put your caliper bolts in there. Okay, when you're putting your calipers on, you want to make sure you push the slide pins all the way in so you can get your caliper on all the way. If your slide pins don't go in all the way, then you won't be able to get your caliper on properly. Do not force your caliper on. The caliper should just go right on there nice and easy. If it doesn't go on there nice and easy, you need to look and see what's keeping you from going in. Make sure your pads are snug up against the rotor. Make sure your slides are in all the way. Make sure they're not sticking out because you got too much Sil-Glide or dialed grease in there. Okay. You got it mounted, torque them to 18 foot-pounds. Check your factory specs. Make sure your line isn't all twisted and goofy looking. It all looks good. Then you can mount your tire and torque them to 100 foot-pounds. And lower it down to the ground and pump your brake pedal before you put it in reverse or drive. And then double check your brake fluid level. Okay, you should be good. And yes, don't forget to check your tire pressure because you don't want a low tire to cause a brake problem. And it's actually the tire being low on pressure. It might give you a pull to one direction. So you should always check your tire pressures after you're done doing a brake job. That's it.